Yes, thank you, Chairman Engel, Ranking Member McCall, and members of the committee for inviting me here to speak this morning as part of such a distinguished panel. I'd like to begin just by unpacking the concept of smart competition to frame my remarks. As I understand it, smart competition means that we know what we're competing for, that we have an objective in mind. It means that we know our competitor, and we know our competitor's strengths and weaknesses, and it means we know what resources we have, what resources we need, and we know how to marshal those resources effectively. I think in this context, U.S. China relationship, that we are falling short. First, we have no clear sense for what we are fighting for. I think the administration and Congress have done a very good job of understanding the challenges and potential challenges that China poses, but that we are largely playing a defensive game. And a defensive game is not a very good strategy for competition. We need a positive and proactive vision of the United States, of where the United States stands within itself, where it stands in the Asia-Pacific region, and where it stands on the global stage, not just for today, but for 2026, when the United States turns 250 years old, or for 2050. China has such a vision, and it allows it to set its priorities, its policies, and to figure out how to allocate its resources. I think that the administration's free and open Indo-Pacific offers a good starting point. It reflects U.S. values. These are values that are shared by our allies. And it reframes the competition away from the United States versus China, a competition that we are going to lose in many different ways, to our advantage, right, to an advantage that is based and rooted in our essential values, and again, the values that are shared by our allies. Second, do we understand China? I think we're getting there. We're making progress. It's a complicated, complex country. I tried to lay out some thoughts in my written testimony, but we need a pipeline of expertise that begins in our secondary schools, through our colleges, graduate schools, and into the U.S. government. Reports that it is more difficult today for young experts, young people who've spent their training and their time learning Chinese and studying in China, reports that it's more difficult for them now to enter the government. That's moving us in the wrong direction, right? We shouldn't be penalizing people for developing expertise. And we certainly shouldn't be penalizing Chinese Americans as well. We also need cooperation with China, and I was heartened to hear the chairman mention this in his remarks. Cooperation not only is essential for addressing many of the global challenges that we face and many bilateral and common interests that we have, but it's also essential for us to understand China, right? If we cut off cooperation, if we cut off exchanges, if we begin to develop a visa policy that is restricting our exchanges, then we're losing again, because we lose our insight into this country. And finally, have we mastered or are we marshaling our resources effectively? I think there are some bright spots, and I think Congress is responsible for some of them. The Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, the BUILD Act, I think are both very important. I think we have people in our government, Matt Pottinger, Randy Shriver, who are internationalists and multilateral in their orientation, who are working together to advance a proactive and positive policy. And I think our military gets it. They understand what free and open Indo-Pacific means, and they're trying to marshal their resources. But we do not have a coherent and constructive and coordinated approach across the various agencies of our government, and we need that. We need a message to come down from the President that reaffirms our support of the free and open Indo-Pacific. We need our public diplomacy and our political capacity building and our trade and investment strategy and our military all to row in the same direction. We need a calling card. It is not enough for us to condemn Chinese policies, Belt and Road Initiative or Made in China 2025, or any of the other myriad policies that we rightly find offensive and challenging. But what is it that we are bringing to the table? Vice President Pence announced an initiative on smart cities back in the meeting, the U.S.-ASEAN meeting last fall, but I haven't seen any evidence that we're truly developing this. Why not develop a smart and sustainable cities program, something, again, that would bring together various parts of our administration and announce a positive and proactive role for the United States? And finally, I think Congress has an important role. In addition to writing, drafting, and passing legislation, it has a diplomatic role that it could play. For example, when we look at this Huawei discussion, I look around many of the countries that I visit in Europe and Asia, and there are a lot of divisions within these governments between the security elements and the their equivalent of the State Departments and foreign ministries. There are different perspectives. Congress should be engaging with their counterparts to help sort of energize the debate in a way that supports the U.S. perspective. We suffer a diplomatic deficit, at our top-level leadership, and Congress needs to step up to help fill that. And Congress, I think, plays an important role, or a potentially important role, as a convener of the various parts of American society that need to get behind this effort. I spent the past about 3 or 4 months out at Stanford University as a visiting fellow, and being there on the West Coast, I can tell you, you get a very different perspective from a university in the tech community and then a very significant Chinese-American community. These are communities that need to be engaged. Congress needs to learn from them, and they also need to learn from Congress. So I hope through informal briefing sessions as well as hearings that you are drawing in other parts of the community that are deeply invested in the U.S. China relationship. So I'll just conclude by saying, I think FBI Director Wray had it just about right when he said that this is a whole of government and whole of society response that we need for China. I would just add that it needs to be a whole of the world response as well. Thank you.